Good afternoon, students. I hope all of you are doing good and I hope your preparation is going fine. Welcome to today's Analyst. This is 24th of December 2023 and we are here to discuss important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. Now, the handout of this session is there in the description box. You may utilize it to streamline your current affairs preparation. Now let's come to the table of contents. The first topic is related to how are forecasts doing. So a lot to learn in this particular topic because this is very interesting. Second topic is related to the tribunals in India. The third topic is related to India's energy sector and the transition of India's energy sector to electric vehicles. So transition to electric vehicle is the third topic. Fourth topic is related to Directorate of Enforcement, that is your ED. Fifth topic, last but not the least, is related to Commission for Air Quality Management, that is your CAQM. So the first topic is how are the forecasts doing? Now, why this is news? Because an editorial has appeared on the status of forecasts in our country in the current scenario. Now, why it is important for us? For our general studies paper 2, issues relating to development and management of social sector, it is important. Then for welfare schemes of vulnerable sections, it is also important. Now, coming to the topic. So, the forecasts, as we know, that we usually call that in our country there are four castes. But in reality, there are four varnas in our country. And there are numerous and thousands of castes. The four varnas, as we know, that Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. These are the four varnas. But there are multiple castes existing in our society. And this caste system, as we all know, it creates hierarchies in our country. That means some people are above, some people are below. It creates prejudices, it creates a lot of stereotypes as well. And because of these hierarchical situations and prejudices, there is employment segregation in our country based on castes. And traditionally, this has been the case. Of course, in the modern times, this employment segregation based on the caste has reduced a lot, but still it can be seen. And of course, this caste system and this caste ascription to many people, it denies mobility to them. That is, it denies them upward social mobility. So this is also one point. And ultimately, it leads to their social exclusion and marginalization as well. Of course, to the people who are belonging to the lower castes. Right? So this is about the caste system in our country. But our Prime Minister, of course, have given a new dimension to this caste. And our Prime Minister has said that the four biggest caste in our country is not your Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. The four biggest caste in our country is your poor people, youth, women and farmers. So these are the four biggest caste in our country according to Prime Minister. And Prime Minister in one of the party meetings as well has said the party workers to focus on these particular dimensions, that is poor people, young people, women and farmers, in order to ensure that the policy benefits are reaching to them adequately. So let's understand the status of these four castes in our country currently. So in the current scenario, what is the status of the poor people in our country? What is the status of youth, status of women and farmers we'll be trying to understand. Okay, so starting with the poor. So we'll be trying to understand the status, of course, through various statistics, various reports. So let's start with the poor, that what is the status of poor people in our country. So according to UNDP, United Nations Development Programme, close to 228 million people are poor in our country currently. So 228 million people, that is out of 1.4 billion population, 228 million people are still poor according to UNDP. And also one more statistics which is very important, that is the bottom 50% of the population, that is the poorest 50% of the population is just having control over 3% of the assets of our country. So the bottom 50% of the population controls just 3% of the assets. And that bottom 50% is contributing just 13% of country's income. So only 13% of country's income is belonging to this bottom 50% of our population, which again points us or makes us wonder about the gross inequality existing in our country. So poverty is there, but income inequality, wealth inequality is also existing. And this particular data is reflective of both asset or let's say wealth inequality and income inequality as well. Now coming to children. So close to 32.1% children in our country are underweight. Now 19.3% children in our country are wasted and 35.5% are stunted. So this is also a very important statistic for us to note down, that according to children, this is also because of poverty. Now, from the perspective of children, 32.1% are underweight, right? 19.3% are wasted, and 35.5% are stunted. So this is also a very important statistic. And comparison of poverty in women. So 50% of women in our country from the age group of 15 to 49 years of age, they are anemic. That is, they are suffering from anemia. Now, again, poverty is a very major reason in this scenario as well. And according to the editorial which we read, so 16% of our population is poor. This is a gross underestimate. So saying that only 16% of the population is poor, it's a gross underestimate, because multidimensionally, even huge chunk of our population, even more chunk of our population is poor. So that's your status of poor people in our country. Now, second is the youth, right? So the status of youth in our country. Now, of course, 50% of population in our country is under 28 years of age. So they will be categorized as youth. Now, according to Periodic Labor Force Survey, PLFS, unemployment rate in our country is 10%, or has been 10%. For which age group? For the age group of people belonging to 15 to 29 years of age. So the people who are from 15 to 29 years of age, under them, unemployment rate is 10%. And this data is from July 2022 to June 2023. Now, also one more thing is there, that this the State of Working India Report 2023. It says that the graduates in our country who are under the 25 years of age bracket, in that case, the unemployment rate is 42.3%. So the graduates who are under the age of 25, amongst them 42.3% are unemployed. Again, this also reflects that in case of youth, unemployment is a very major concern. And if the youth is not employed properly, they're not employed adequately, what will be the impact? Of course, the impact would be internal migration and external migration as well. Internal migration, that means from various parts of their country, they'll try to move towards the capital, or they try to move from rural to urban areas, from tier 2 cities to probably tier 1 cities to urbanized areas. So internal migration will be happening. And of course, the issue of brain drain will also come because of lack of employment opportunities in our country. They'll go to other countries, for example, Canada, UK, US, Australia, right? These are most favorable destinations for students to go abroad. And if they do not do internal migration or external migration, if they're not having avenues for that as well, they'll resort to crime. It will lead to violence as well. Or they'll spend their times into drugs. They'll involve themselves into drugs. So, of course, because of these things, internal security problem might also arise, right? And this we can see in variety of regions in our country, especially Jammu and Kashmir and Punjab, right? Where youth is unemployed and they are moving towards criminal activities, right? So this is the status of youth. So the poor people we have seen, the youth, the status of it we have seen. Now coming to women and farmers. So women, let's start with the women. So we know that half of the population in our country is of course women. But what are the reasons for the backwardness amongst women? So backwardness amongst the women section of our country, what are the reasons for it? First and very prominent reason is of course the institution of patriarchy. So patriarchal existence in our country, dominance of male, right, towards the females, and this has been traditionally going on in our country. So patriarchy as a reason impacting the lower status of women in the society is very prominent. Now, regressive socio-cultural norms, that is societal norms, the cultural norms which have been existing since centuries, it has been regressive, that is against women. There is a lower level of education among women. If you see the literacy rates, literacy rate of a male is higher than that of females, right? So lower literacy rate, lower education, that is also a reason for backwardness. Little property, so less or no control over the property in our country, right? Even though they are having equal property rights, but still, because of this patriarchal existence and regressive social cultural norms, they are not having access to property. That means economic resources they are not having access to, right? So this is also one major reason. Then high levels of unemployment. So high levels of unemployment amongst women can be seen. Gender discrimination. Now, in all facets of life, in all spheres, you will see women being discriminated on the basis of their gender, right? In form of payments as well, so equal payments they are not getting. In form of job opportunities equal they are not getting. Education also, they are not getting equal education as compared to men, right? So gender discrimination they face. And crime against women is also on rise. So they see crime against them as well, and specifically against a particular gender, that is women. And we'll see how, because NCRB data, that is National Crime Records Bureau data of December 2023, it shows that the crime against women rose by 4% from 2021 as compared to from 2022 as compared to 2021. So in from 2021 to 2022, there has been a rise of crime against women by 4%. Ideally, there should be a decline, but there's a rise against crime against women in up to the extent of 4%. And close to 4,45,000 criminal cases or cases have been registered talking about the crime against women. They have been just registered. Now, there are a lot of cases, of course, in lakhs also, which has not been registered, right? Because many of the crimes against women, they go unaccounted for, right? So close to 4,45,000 cases are registered in this case. That is the crime against women. In 1 year, that is 2022. So this is also a data which tells us about the backwardness of a women or backwardness of one gender in our country. Now, according to World Bank data, close to 19.6 million women 19.6 million women left the workforce between the years of 2004-5 and 2011-12. So in this span of 6 to 7 years, 19.6 million women left the workforce altogether. Now, there can be multitudinal reasons for it. Of course, patriarchy can be a reason, lower education can be a reason, gender discrimination can be a reason, crime against them can be a reason, multitude reasons can be there. But the data is 19.6 million women left the workforce from the year of 2004-5 to 2011 and 12. Now, this is also very important data which you should note down. Now, talking about the farmers. So, farmers, if you talk about farmers, one issue which we regularly talk about is the case of farmer suicides. Now, also it includes farmer suicides as well and suicide of agricultural laborers as well, right? So, suicides in relation to agriculture sector, right? So, the data is for 2020, 2021 and 2022. So, in 2020, 10,600 farmer suicide, right? In 2021, 10,881 farmer suicide in our country. In 2022, 11,290 farmers suicides in our country. This shows that even till today, right? Even till today, so many decades have passed of our independence. Several reforms we have taken, Green Revolution, even after that, 11,000 farmers on an average yearly are committing suicide in our country. Now, what are the various reasons for it? We need to understand. Of course, the first reason is a small land holding, fragmented land holding, which ultimately leads to lower productivity, lower efficiency, and in a way, lower return to the farmers as well. So that is one reason. Ultimately, it leads to poverty, right? Debt trap can be a reason, right? So farmers are involved in debt trap. Rising input cost. Now, because of rising input cost, they are not able to afford that input, proper input, and ultimately they are not getting adequate output if the input is not efficient enough. Then insufficient MSP, that is minimum support price. Now, first, the minimum support price is not adequate, and second, the minimum support price is not provided to all the farmers for all of their produce. So there are several loopholes in that as well. Then uncertainty in market prices. So in 1 year or in few months, market price would be very high. In few months, it will be totally low. So that fluctuation in the market price, it is affecting farmers the most. Then natural disasters. So rampant rainfalls, floods, droughts, because of these natural disasters also, farmers are suffering. And ultimately, again, they are caught in a debt trap, right? And insurance. So adequately, they're not able to get insurance. That is we are having particular scheme, that is PM Fasal Bima Yojana, but many farmers are not able to access that scheme. So insurance, first of all, in a variety of places, that insurance to the farmers, to the small farmers in particular, it is absent or it is denied, right? And since they're not having awareness to avail government schemes, they're not having proper education to avail government schemes, they ultimately commit suicides, right? Because they are again caught in a debt trap, they are mired in poverty and they commit suicide, right? So this is the status of farmers in our country. So we have discussed that how are the four castes doing in our country. Of course, now there are positives to it as well, right? There are positive points as well, but today our motive was to have a critical point of view, right? That what is the status of youth, what is the status of poor people, what is the status of women, what is the status of farmers in our country. Now, these data sets, these data points, these factual things which we discussed till now, you can of course use it in your mains answers in order to enhance it and in order to enrich your answers to substantiate your point even further, right? Now, probably in some other lecture, in some other analyst video, we'll try to understand the governmental schemes on this as well, the solutions to all the problems which we discussed. Now, coming to the second topic, that is the tribunals in India. And the context is that the Honorable Supreme Court has clarified that the tribunals cannot direct the government to frame policies. Now, why this is important? Because our General Studies Paper 2, statutory, regulatory and quasi-judicial bodies have been mentioned. And tribunals, as you all know, it's a quasi-judicial body. That is why it becomes important for us to understand. Okay, so let's understand what are tribunals in particular. Now, tribunals are quasi-judicial bodies, quasi-judicial institutions. They're also adjudicatory bodies. So quasi-judicial means they're not having full power as of a judiciary, right? But they are having semi-judicial powers, right? So they are quasi-judicial institutions. And adjudicatory bodies, that means they are involved in adjudication of disputes as well. Then alternative to the traditional court system. So tribunals have been set up in our country as an alternate system to the court system in our country, right? So alternative to the traditionally existing court system in our country, that is why tribunals have been established. Of course, the motive behind this is to ensure swift, cost-effective and decentralized resolution of disputes in our country, right? That is the motive behind setting up of the tribunals. What are the various salient features of tribunals? They are following the principles of natural justice. They are not bound by the CPC, that is Civil Procedure Code. Now, several tribunals have been made which are having subject expertise. For example, National Green Tribunal, expertise in environment, National Companies Law Tribunal, expertise in companies law, right? So subject expertise they're having. Specific area a tribunal is established. So specialization is there. And of course, quasi-judicial nature of it, which we have already discussed. Now, it is also appellate authority, that is, you can appeal to that tribunal as well. That means if a case is not going in your favor, appellate body also a tribunal can be. Right? So appellate authority, it can also be where you can appeal in an already existing order for a pre-existing order. Okay. Now, time-bound resolution. Now, that is also a very important feature that tribunals offer time-bound resolution to its parties, right? The parties who are involved. So that resolution is time-bound, probably in less than 6 months, in few months, or in less than a year, right? So they give swift decisions. And of course, they are cost-effective as well and decentralized as well. Now, coming to the constitutional provisions of it. What are the various constitutional provisions? So, the 42nd Amendment Act of our Constitution, which happened in 1976, it added a new part in our Constitution. That is your Part 14. So, this Part 14, titled Tribunals, it consists of two articles, two very, very important articles. One is Article 323A, another is Article 323B. Now, Article 323A, it talks about setting up of administrative tribunals. And Article 323B, it talks about tribunals for other matters. So, administrative tribunals means tribunals dealing with the administrative matters, right? With the administration, governance part, tribunals dealing with that. Now, in order to enforce this Article 323A, an act came into being. So, Administrative Tribunals Act in 1985. So, an act was enacted, right? That is Administrative Tribunals Act in 1985. Now, this act empowered the central government to establish the Central Administrative Tribunal, right, for administrative purposes, and state level administrative tribunals as well. So, two articles, Article 323A, Article 323B. 323A talks about administrative tribunals, 323B talks about tribunals for other matters. Now, what are the various classifications of tribunals in our country? Of course, administrative tribunal is one. In that, you have three. One is central administrative tribunal, second is state administrative tribunals, then joint administrative tribunal. Now coming to the other tribunals, that is tribunal for the other matters. One is your National Green Tribunal, a very prominent one for your environmental related purposes. Then Foreigners Tribunal is there. Then your NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal, enforcing your company's law, right? Then Telecom Dispute Settlement and Appellate Tribunal. So it's for telecom disputes, right, and settlement of them, and also appellate tribunal whereby you can appeal on the already existing orders of this in this telecom sector. I hope this classification of tribunal is also very clear to all of you. Now coming to the third topic, that is transition of India to electric vehicles. Now, an optimistic outlook towards India's transition to electric vehicle has been given by the industry leaders, right? Now, why this is important for a GS paper 3 environment section, this particular topic becomes important. And also science and technology section, this electric vehicle transition becomes important, okay? Now coming on to EVs transition in India. Now in the COP26 summit, which happened in Glasgow, India had a target to achieve net zero emission status by 2070 and also to lower the emission intensity by 45% from 2005 levels by 2030, right? Now in order to achieve these goals, India's transition to electric vehicles is very critical, is very important. Now, what are the various statistics which tells us about India's transition? See, first statistic is that India is, of course, the third largest automobile market in the world. Now, according to Niti Aayog, by 2030, 80% of the two and three wheelers, 40% of the buses, and 30% of the cars in India will be electric vehicles. So, according to Niti Aayog, by 2030, by the year 2030, 80% of the two and three wheelers, 40% of the buses, and 30% of the cars in our country are going to be electric vehicles, right? And according to your Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, in 2022, sales of this electric vehicles reached 1 million units in our country, which is a leap of 300% from the previous year, that is 2021. So this shows again that electric mobility and electric vehicles in our country are on a rise. And 1/3 of those EVs which were sold were electric three-wheelers, so public transportation, right? Now, Economic Survey 2023 also says that this electric vehicle sector, it is having 49% compounded annual growth rate, CAGR. So it's having a CAGR of 49%. And the target is that to have 10 million annual sales by 2030. So by 2030, 10 million annual sales will be there. And of course, the market valuation will be $206 billion. Now, what are the various benefits of electric vehicles? Because of transition is happening, various statistics also we saw, but what benefits these electric vehicles will be offering to our country? Now, first is in case of greenhouse gas emissions, it will lower the greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, your nitrogen oxide, particulate matters, volatile organic compounds as well, VOCs as well. Of course, their intensity and emission will reduce. And it will be beneficial for public health. Why? Because it will reduce the risk of respiratory and cardiovascular diseases in our country. Because if we transition to electric vehicles, emissions, greenhouse emissions will lower down. And if they will lower down, public health at large will improve. Now, for energy security also this will be beneficial because we will have now a resilient energy grid and a resilient electricity grid which will be powered by a mix of energy sources. Of course, renewable energy resources, right? So we'll be having mixed electricity grid. It will be reducing our vulnerability to the fluctuation of oil market in the world as well, fluctuation of oil prices. It will enhance our energy security by reducing the reliance on fossil fuel imports, because we all know that we are dependent on Middle East for importing crude oil. Of course, we are importing crude oil from Russia as well because we are not having natural resource for it. But if we transition towards electric vehicles that need to import crude oil or fossil fuels from other countries, this will reduce. And it will also enhance our energy security as well. So we'll become more secure with respect to energy sector. I hope this is also very clear to all of you. Now, it will also build technology. It will lead to job creation as well. What kind of technology? What kind of job creation? Of course, it will benefit the automotive sector particularly because technology related to electric vehicles will be given to automotive sector. Energy storage capacity and infrastructure will be built. Grid stability, of course, will be getting. Battery manufacturing. Now, if all these things will be happening, the charging infrastructure, battery manufacturing, it will create a lot of employment opportunities for our population as well. And coming to the savings part, it will lead to a lot of savings as well because savings will increase because of the lower operating cost in electric vehicles. In long term, the operating cost will be lower. There will be fewer moving of the parts and it will also require less maintenance. So in long run, the cost which we incur to maintain a fossil fuel powered vehicle, that means a vehicle powered by petrol or diesel, this is the cost will be much higher compared to the maintenance cost or the usage cost of an electric vehicle, right? I hope this is also very clear to all of you. So these are the certain benefits. Now let's see in particular what are the various government policies and the prominent government policies promoting electric vehicle. The first most important is FAME, that is faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles. Now under this FAME category, FAME scheme, government is providing a lot of subsidies in the form of tax rebates, preferential financing, exemption from road tax or registration fees. A lot of subsidies and tax rebates are being provided. To whom? To those who are manufacturing electric vehicles, right? Again, in order to ensure that there is faster adoption of electric vehicles and also faster manufacturing of electric vehicles. So a lot of concessions are being provided by the government to the manufacturers. Of course, there is production linked incentive scheme as well. That is, if you go for incremental levels of production, you'll get certain incentive from the government in the form of tax rebates, in the form of your lowering down of the interest, so interest subvention schemes, a lot of other things, basically to give concessions to the manufacturers and motivate them, empower them to produce more and more electric vehicles and to manufacture more and more electric vehicles. The last but not the least, the most important is the vehicle scrappage policy. So you scrap your older vehicle, you get certain benefits, you get certain exemptions, you get certain discounts when you have to purchase a newer electric vehicle. So this vehicle scrappage policy, it's also very importantly moving India into a field of electric vehicles, moving India into an era of electric vehicles. So it is also important for India's transition to electric vehicles. I hope this is also clear to all of you. The next topic is related to Directorate of Enforcement, that is your ED. Now, ED has made certain arrests in a money laundering case concerning your smartphone maker Vivo, right? Now, why this particular thing is important? Because we have to understand what is this ED, what are its functions, right? So, for a GS paper 2, statutory, regulatory, and quasi-judicial bodies have been mentioned, and ED is your statutory body, right? So, Directorate of Enforcement, this ED, because every time in news we hear a lot of cases that ED is investigating this person, ED is investigating this particular case, ED is involved in this, ED is involved in that. But we have to understand what is the primary role of this Directorate of Enforcement. So first thing which we have to know is that it is a statutory body. Now its main case or its main motto, I will say, is to ensure money laundering and foreign exchange laws implementation, right? So implementing money laundering and foreign exchange laws in our country. And what is this ED? It is a premier financial investigation agency of Government of India. So it's a premier agency for investigation of crimes in money laundering cases and foreign exchange laws for the Government of India. Now it is under which ministry? It is under your Department of Revenue, under your Ministry of Finance. Now we'll understand the evolution of this particular ED as well, that in 1956 it was formed as Enforcement Unit. In 1957 it was renamed as ED. Now in 1960 the shift was there from a Department of Economic Affairs to Department of Revenue. So earlier ED was there under Department of Economic Affairs, then it was moved to Department of Revenue under your Ministry of Finance only. And earlier it used to Earlier, it used to contain the law of FERA 1947. And after that, FERA 1973, that is Foreign Exchange Regulation Act 1973. And ultimately, now they are implementing the laws of Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999 and Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. So they act as implementational agency for these laws. Now, what are the various laws enforced by ED? We'll understand each law one by one. One is your Foreign Exchange Management Act, right? Again, dealing with your foreign exchange. Then Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. So the news which we saw is in relation to money laundering, right? So under this law, ED is empowered to arrest the criminals against this in this particular law. So Foreign Exchange Management Act, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Now, there is one more act, the recent one, that is the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act. That is FEOA, which is of the year 2018. And also sponsoring organizations under the 1974 Foreign Exchange Conservation and Smuggling Activity Prevention Act. So, under this act also, this is enforced by Enforcement Directorate. What are the various functions of it? One function is, of course, to conduct investigations under your FEMA and under all the laws, and to impose penalty if they find the other party to be guilty. Also to execute the provisions of PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering, your this Fugitive Economic Offenders Act of 2018. So to implement and execute the provisions of that, and to get involved in the search and seizure operations as well. And it is also having a all India jurisdiction and a all personal jurisdiction. That is your ED, Directorate of Enforcement. I hope this is very, very clear to all of you. And coming to last but not the least topic, that is your Commission for Air Quality Management, that is your CAQM. Now, CAQM on Saturday said that it will wait for the air quality to improve in the National Capital Region before imposing more severe and extreme curbs. Now, we have to understand what is this CAQM, Commission for Air Quality and Management. Why this is important for our GS paper 2, statutory, regulatory and quasi-judicial bodies, it is important because CAQM is a statutory body. And also from our GS paper 3 perspective, environment and ecology, this becomes important. So coming on to the topic, this CAQM. Now it is a statutory body which was first formed by an ordinance in October 2020. Now after that ordinance, there was an act, that is your Commission for Air Quality Management in NCR and Adjoining Areas Act of 2021. So your CAQM in NCR and Adjoining Areas Act of 2021 was the act which was enacted by the Parliament. And then this body was established, that is your Commission for Air Quality Management. Now what is the composition of it and the functioning of it, we'll understand. So it's composed of a chairperson and 5 ex officio members. Now the chairperson can be a government official of the rank of secretary or chief secretary. Now the tenure is that they can be a chairperson for 3 years or until and unless he or she attains the 70 years of age. So that is your chairperson. Now 5 ex officio members will be there. Either they can be chief secretary or secretaries in charge of the department which is dealing with the environmental protection in these regions. That is Delhi, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan and UP. Right? So in these regions, Delhi, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan and UP, the chief secretary or secretary in charge of the department dealing with the environmental protection, they are the ex officio members of this particular organization, that is Commission for Air Quality Management, CAQM. Now there can be 3 full-time technical members as well and 3 members from NGOs as well, non-governmental organizations. And the technical members, they can be from CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board, ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization and NITI Aayog. Right. So I hope the composition is very clear to all of you. Chairman is there, 5 ex officio members are there, 3 technical members are there, members from NGOs are there and technical members from CPCB, ISRO, NITI Aayog. I hope this is very clear to all of you. Now what are the various powers and functions of this CAQM? First is that it will restrict the activities which are influencing the air quality and which are badly influencing the air quality of this particular region, that is National Capital Region. Right? So it can restrict the activities, it is having power to do so. It is also having the power and function to investigate and to ensure research is happening in relation to environmental pollution impacting our air quality. Right? So it's having the power to investigate it and it is having the power to research on this topic as well. That is how environmental pollution is impacting air quality. And also preparing codes and guidelines, so code of conducts and guidelines to prevent and control air pollution. So it is having that power as well. First power is they can impose restrictions. Second power is they can investigate, they can do research, they can publish a code of conduct, they can give guidelines also that how environmental pollution can be curtailed and how to prevent air pollution. They can also issue directions and get involved in inspections and regulations. And of course, the directions which they give are binding in nature. That is, you cannot disobey the directions which are given by your CAQM. I hope the CAQM is also very, very clear to all of you. So thank you for watching, and I hope you learned a lot from this lecture. Thank you.